To make progress, we have to do a better job of working together, which requires that we do a better job of understanding each other's points of view and have more productive discussions. On your flash drive, you'll find that there's a handout named Agreeable Disagreement. And actually, they put it in your package. At least I had it in my package. And you may wonder why that was there. Well, that was my handout for this Birds of a Feather that John and I did. And it was, in itself, was kind of an abstract of a much larger document that somebody else wrote. And if you look in the paper that was in your package, you'll see a pointer to where you can read the whole document if you want. So it was an abstract, and here I'm going to further abstract a couple of important points. The first principle when you're discussing something with somebody else is to curb your cynicism. If you believe that the other person is operating from nefarious motives or is trying to deceive you in some way, don't just assume that as a given from the beginning. Give them the benefit of the doubt until they give you some evidence that, in fact, maybe they're not operating totally above board. Second is acknowledge that the other person has a point of view. You have a point of view, and they have a point of view. And what you're trying to do by discussing things, you're trying to change their point of view, which means you have to know what it is. You need to listen to what they say and try and understand how they're getting there. How is it that they have that point of view? Conversely, the other person has to know your point of view, because that's the context that they have for understanding what you're proposing. If they don't know what the background is behind your position, then to them it might just look crazy or silly or all those other words that we tend to ascribe to the other person. So describe it to them clearly and unemotionally. And finally, and I think most important, the most important principle is, when you're faced with a compelling argument and you say to yourself, way in the back of the secret recesses of your mind, damn, he's right. Recognize when that happens that conceding the other person's point of view, the other person's argument, is not a weakness. It's a strength. Understanding another person's point of view and realizing that it has more validity than your point of view isn't losing, it's learning. That's how we make progress. Last year we reframed our mission statement to foster the art of square dance calling. Say along with me. To foster the art of square dance calling and improve caller skills. How do we do that? Well, we have many initiatives, structures, and committees that do things like maintain the program lists and definitions, document teaching methods, and establish caller training curricula. But I believe the most important thing that we do is we gather information, we forge a consensus for a democratic decision, and we disseminate that consensus back out to the community, so that the wider community knows what we're all thinking. And by we, I don't mean us here in this room, I mean the community as a whole, because we're the ones that are most plugged in to that community and all its far-flung tendrils. And if we take that role seriously, it means that when we discuss things with one another and when we argue, we have to work to be the very best at it that we can. So think about that when you're having discussions, and when you're discussing things with other people, try to come to a good common consensus. Now, in closing, I would just like to say that I'd like to thank those who have helped and supported me during my term as chairman. I had the privilege of working with two outstanding ECs. I'd like to recognize Betsy Gotta. You don't really have to stand up, just wave. Betsy Gotta, Ken Matusi, Eric Hennerlaw, Tim Mariner, John Marshall, and Deborah Carroll Jones, who were all in one or the other or both of those ECs. Thanks so much for your hard work and your support. There's no way that the chairman gets anything done without those folks pitching in, and really they carry most of the load. I'd like to also thank the Board of Governors that I had the privilege to lead. In the interest of brevity, I won't list all their names. You've heard them all here tonight anyway. And especially thanks to the Home Office and Dana Shermer. Oh, there he is, Dan over in the corner. Literally, you folks have no idea. This organization literally would not run without Dana and the Home Office crew. They're what make it go. We make suggestions of what we'd like to have happen, and they go away and make it happen. But finally, and most of all, I'd like to thank my sounding board, my wise consultant, the person on whose shoulder I cry, love of my wife Pam. I couldn't do it without her. And you'll be pleased to hear that's the end.
We have just a few more things, and that'll launch us into our last hour here. And the first is to recognize a recognition of an overlooked board member. We need to make that correction right off the bat. Not only an excellent board member, but former executive director of CALLERLAB, and that would be Jerry and Del Reed. Please stand and be recognized. And a nice round of applause for Jerry and Del Reed. While you are in the applauding mood, we want to take a moment to introduce our incoming chairman of the board, Vernon Jones. So a nice round of applause for Vernon, please.
Thank you, buddy. A few weeks ago, Dana contacted me and asked if I would say a few words about Barry Clasper, and I said, sure, I'll be happy to say as few words as I possibly can about Barry Clasper. I said, I'd much rather talk about Pam. She's a whole lot more interesting than Barry is. He said, no. I said, well, is there something I can say about Barry? I don't know, something along the lines of, and I said, oh, I know. He's the first and only chairman from Canada. And Dana said, well, no, that Tim Crawford was the first chairman from Canada. And I said, well, that tenure was easily forgettable, so we can just go ahead and say it. We can go ahead and use that. And Dana said no, and therefore I can't. There's not a single person in this room that cares more about our activity or this organization than this gentleman. There's not a single person in this room that works harder for this activity or this organization than this gentleman. There's not a single person in this room that will continue to care or work hard for this activity or this organization than this gentleman. Therefore, on behalf of the Board of Governors, the Executive Committee, and the Home Office staff, please join me in welcoming and in congratulating for a job very well done, Chairman Barry Clasper.
That's a better ovation than I usually get when I call. Maybe I'll just read that speech at my next convention. Thank you very much.
To offer any last-minute changes to our schedule and special announcements, ladies and gentlemen, your Executive Director, here is Dana Shermer.
Presenters and the recipients of awards, please meet over on my left-hand side for last-minute photos. Also, I've been asked that the women in calling if they would stay, they would like to get a photo of the women in calling here this week. Also, a photo of the GCA members that are here this week. If you'll stay, we'll have a photo for you. If there's anyone not included in that group, there will be a dance starting next door in Colorado. It's a country western dance tonight. This is a first for quite a while. I don't think we've had it in quite a while. But a country western dance hosted by Mike Salerno, and it's country western dancing. So go have some fun. There will be an open bar there, so help yourself. And with that, the annual meeting, we should point out, the annual meeting tomorrow morning will start at 9 o'clock in Colorado, next door. So, if you're doing a country western dance, please leave the hall in one piece. All right, thank you all. We hope you have a good evening, and thank you for being